Bench today, led by Chief Justice of India N.V. Ramana, has pulled up the government for passing a bills related to tribunals without much debate, without much discussion in Parliament. Well, the court has also been unhappy with the government for delays in appointments to these tribunals. So, why is the court angry? Supreme Court को क्यों गुस्सा आ रहा है Bhadra से ना? So, as I said, Bhadra will help us find answers to these questions. You can also start sending in your questions for her. So, Bhadra, as I said, why is the Supreme Court so angry?
You know, Ruhi, we as journalists always talk about vacancies in high courts and subordinate judiciary, and have often, ignored the rising number of vacancies in these tribunals, forgetting the fact that these tribunals are as crucial as the high courts. See, these tribunals were constituted under the constitution only.
Right.
And these tribunals are quasi-judicial bodies which actually deal with very specific issues because they're specialized tribunals. So like we have tribunals related to army cases, we have tribunals, that hear service matters, disputes between employers and employee in the government, and income tax tribunal disputes, and good services tax tribunal disputes. So we have these multiple tribunals that have been functioning for a number of years, and these are directly connected or linked to the citizens of the country because, for every small little dispute, we go to these tribunals. And these tribunals were specially created to, in a way, offload the burden of various high courts. And despite having these specialized tribunals, we actually noticed it that I think for almost now 4 or 5 years, no new appointments have been made. And it's not that the recommendations have not been made to the government by the Search and the Selection Committee. They have been made, but they are pending with the government for more than 2.5 years now. And as a result, these tribunals have virtually become defunct. And the reason why the Supreme Court is very anxious and upset is because most of these, in fact, every Search and Selection Committee is headed by a sitting Supreme Court judge.
Right.
So it's not that the recommendations are being sent by, some small little body or small little committee. It is headed by a Supreme Court judge. It comprises representatives of the government. The recommendations are made after sufficient due deliberations. And despite the recommendations pending with the government for 2 years, there is no appointment. So
Right.
The entire system has got stuck. The tribunals are choking with cases, but there are no members to hear the matters. So much so that probably we can say thanks to the pandemic, that these, in some areas, the tribunals, like a particular bench of tribunal is actually taking up cases for 2 different benches because for them the main concern is to, in a way, dispose matters because
Right.
they just can't keep keep them lagging. So, and the situation has become so difficult that members are really actually sitting from 10 in the morning till 8 in the night hearing matters. Some are hearing offline, some are hearing online. So I think this is like a concern which is really upsetting the Chief Justice of India, Justice N.V. Ramana, and not just today, about a week back also he echoed this concern, and he was expecting the government to react to whatever he said in the last date of hearing, but when no action was taken, so today he again lashed out at the government.
So let's talk specifically about what the Chief Justice said today in court with regard to the tribunal matter.
Again, this is a very interesting issue. See, the reason why the appointments in the tribunals actually got stuck was because in 2017, the government came up with a new law. And under this new law, all the terms and conditions with regard to the service conditions of for the tribunal members, the selection, the procedure and everything, would be governed by a common set of rules. Before this, prior to this, there were actually different laws governing different tribunals, but the government wanted to have a common set of rules. Now, these rules were actually challenged in the Supreme Court, and since 2017, the litigation is going on. And thrice the litigation took place in the Supreme Court, and on all the 3 occasions, the Supreme Court has in a way struck down what the government proposed, because in view of the Supreme Court, the rules that were being proposed by the government actually gave primacy to the executive over these appointments in tribunals. And after all, considering that these tribunals are actually an extension of the judiciary in our country, the court felt that these rules in a way amounted to interference or interfering with the independence of judiciary. So the last judgment in this matter came just last month,
right,
wherein the Supreme Court of India struck down the ordinance that was introduced by the Government of India to overcome an earlier verdict that was given last year in November 2020. So when this, despite the fact that this ordinance was struck down, the Government of India went ahead with the bill, introduced it in the monsoon session, and it was cleared also. And unfortunately, it was cleared without any proper debate. And the statements and objects and reasons for the act did not even mention this fact that the provisions which are being introduced in the bill were actually those that were struck down by the Supreme Court of India in its last month's judgment. So the court actually got upset over this as well. So the fact that, you know, vacancies in tribunals was already a matter of concern for them, but you know, this fact also got added to it. The fact that Parliament did not debate over a bill that has reintroduced the provisions which the Supreme Court has held unconstitutional.
Right.
You know.
So yesterday also the Chief Justice made a similar point about lawmaking and how bills are being passed without discussion.
That's right, you know, and the reason why he actually expressed his concern over it is because we have realized, which I have personally experienced as well, when the bill is passed by the Parliament, if there are no debates to support the bill, in favor of the bill or against the bill, it becomes extremely difficult for the courts to interpret the law. Because when there are Constituent Assembly debates, while interpreting the laws, the courts go through these debates to understand what was the purpose behind the law, what was the reason, you know, why the government wanted to come up with this law. So upon this understanding only, the court is able to kind of give a better judgment or give a better view and opinion on a particular subject which is stated in a law. In the absence of these debates, it is increasingly becoming difficult for the courts to really interpret the law.
Right.
And this is a concern which is you know, which I have actually experienced and noticed in various hearings in the Supreme Court, whether it may be related to the Aadhaar case or any other case where a constitutionality of a law is challenged. You know, often the courts kind of, you know, they struggle to understand.
And they refer to parliamentary debates.
That's right. They refer to parliamentary debates. You know, it is very important to refer to these debates when you are testing the validity of a law, because you need to understand what was the objective behind the law. And if you don't have that view in front of you, then it is difficult to interpret the law.
All right. Okay, that's a very interesting point, Bhadra. This let's take this question from Rohan Navalkar. Why doesn't the government or the court set a time limit for the duration a case is in progress? It has created a significant logjam of cases that go on for years and decades. So, you know, as they say, tariq pe tariq.
You know, see, I'll tell you, this is again an interesting thing. See, when we talk about tribunals, in many of these tribunals, the laws governing these tribunals actually set a deadline also. But due to lack of manpower, it is difficult. And you know, manpower is not the only issue which these tribunals are facing, Ruhi. It is also related to infrastructure. These tribunals do not have sufficient infrastructure. They do not have adequate space. I mean, so much so that in some of these tribunals, they do not even have adequate storage space to keep their files. Some of them are operating from temporary areas. You know, so these are areas of concern, and unfortunately our government has not really given a thought to it. They bring out a law. It's very easy to make a law, but see, when you come up with a law, you need to have a redressal system as well. And how do you have it? You need to have a redressal system. You can have a redressal system if only you have a proper, adequate infrastructure created for it.
Right.
For instance, the government came up with GST, but there is no tribunal right now to deal with GST problems. So where do the people go? Where do they go with their complaints? So, these are issues that actually are plaguing our tribunal system right now, the setup related to the tribunals.
In fact, Tanveer Panjwani is saying that the government has abolished the tribunal for the film industry. Won't it add to the burden of high
course,
courts?
that is another interesting thing. The bill that was cleared last month by the Parliament actually also abolishes certain tribunals. And after their abolishment, the cases will go back to the high courts. You see, that is the most interesting thing. These tribunals were created to lessen the burden of the high courts. Now, slowly and steadily, this is the second time the government is actually wrapping up some tribunals, and the workload of the high courts will increase. Now, on one hand, you are not appointing judges.
Right.
For instance, today the Delhi High Court is functioning with just 26 judges, which is just like, less than 50% also. And on top of that, you are sending them more work. So on an average, a judge is hearing 100 cases a day. And this is a scenario even in the tribunals. So when you are kind of overloading them with work, how do you expect judgments to be delivered? How do you expect cases to be decided? So it is impossible. It is impossible. It is bound to lead to a logjam in the courts.
All right. Okay, we have a question from Hitesh, who's a member of our YouTube community. Will you please talk about the SC hearing on the Pegasus issue and the response of the government on this? Also, I hope Noinima Basu is fine in Afghanistan. Hitesh, thank you so much for asking. Noinima is fine. She's safe. We're trying to bring her back to Delhi as soon as possible.
So as far as Pegasus is concerned, so the matter was heard today at length in the Supreme Court. And as we all know, there are a batch of petitions that have been filed in the Supreme Court demanding a court-monitored inquiry. The Government of India has filed a short affidavit. It's just a 3-page affidavit in which it proposes to set up a committee of technical experts. It hasn't taken any firm stand on whether it used Pegasus or whether any one of its agencies has used Pegasus or not. But it is proposing to set up a committee. But this proposal has been objected by the petitioners because they say that if the government has used Pegasus, then it cannot be allowed to set up a committee. And if it hasn't used Pegasus, then our line of argument completely changes.
Right.
In response to these two arguments, the court actually kind of wanted to give time to the Government of India to file a detailed affidavit, clarifying their stand. But the Solicitor General, Mr. Tushar Mehta, he was of a firm view that there is no need for a detailed affidavit, and he actually wanted to kind of, he wanted a assurance from the petitioners that if he files a detailed affidavit, and then in that case they should withdraw their petitions,
right,
which of course the petitioners were not willing to undertake. So the matter will continue tomorrow. Let us see what the court orders. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Let's take this question from Mureshwar Pedadi, who's also a member of our YouTube community. Will the state of affairs comment by CJI will go down well to notify each bill passed in the session? Is bill passed within just 7 minutes? So I think the larger question is that in this session we've seen how bills were passed in minutes, without any discussion. So will the comments by the CJI make any impact?
Well, I guess it should, because in his yesterday's speech, since he spoke about the falling standards of the parliamentary debate, he also made an emphasis. Actually, he implored and urged the legal committee members to come out and participate more in public life so that we can have better debates in the parliament. So, of course, I think it is like considering that this is a very critical remark over the functioning of the temple of democracy, it's the House. So I actually sincerely hope that it affects the members of parliament. And in fact, it's not, I think, the CJI may have spoken about parliamentary debates, but we have often noticed that the courts have regularly, they've been talking about the role of the parliament, they've been talking about the role of our elected representatives, how I think they are really not keeping up their promises of being, the representative of the public. So it's something which has been coming from the Supreme Court on various occasions. But so far we have not really seen any difference. But let's see if the CJI takes a strong stand on it, then hopefully some positive impact or result should be made.
Okay, I'll take one last question quickly from Rohan Navalkar. Why haven't the previous CJIs pushed the envelope on these issues? So I think these issues would perhaps mean both the issues that we are talking about today?
Yeah, see, I agree that the CGI, the past CGI has never looked into it, but I think that could also be considering the fact that if all this was under litigation, especially the matter related to the appointment in tribunals. As I said, the rules regarding the selection of tribunal members was actually under challenge before the Supreme Court since 2017. And I think nobody could even guess that despite the fact that the court twice turned down the government's proposed rules, nobody actually could expect that the government will go ahead and reintroduce the same rules.
Right.
So I think it was just a matter of time, a matter of chance probably. Probably the former CGI thought the government may, change its mind. But since it hasn't, and it has remained adamant and brought in a law to kind of now overcome the Supreme Court judgment once again. So I guess that is really kind of now really bothering the judiciary.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So the Modi government inviting the ire of the Supreme Court over tribunals, the fact that there are delays in appointments, there's a backlog of cases, which is causing a lot of problems to common people, as Bhadra pointed out. And also, of course, the CGI upset with the government for bills being passed without adequate discussion in Parliament. Whether that has an impact, let's see. The next session of Parliament should tell us something more about it. Thank you for watching Government Matters and for sending in your questions. Keep subscribing to our YouTube channel. Become a member of our YouTube community. There are details given below in the description box.